Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of the statewide news service and covering the capital for over 30 years.
Yeah, and I've been I started when I was very young, but I really have a real passion for the way government operates, and part of, what makes government operate are the transportation hubs that we have. So our guest today is Michael Franchini, who's the executive director of the Capital District Transportation Committee, not the authority, but the committee. So this committee is made up of mayors and county executives from 4 counties.
Correct.
So you got like a 15-member committee or something to that effect.
It's actually 21 members.
21, okay.
Excuse me, because we do involve all the regional transportation agencies also.
Yes.
So the New York State Department of Transportation, the New York State Thruway, the Port of Albany,
CDTA.
the airport. CDTA is a very important member of our committee, and we meet monthly.
Oh, it is monthly now? I thought it was every other.
We
Every
meet-
fourth, I thought it was 4 times a year or something. to
Right.
that effect.
Our planning, we have 2 major committees. The planning
Okay.
committee, which meets monthly, is kind of where a lot of the work gets done, because you
Okay.
have representatives from the different agencies, engineers, public works officials, planners. And then the quarterly meeting is with the elected officials. So that's the quarterly meeting.
What's the mission though? I mean, you're coordinating all these transportations or?
Well, MPOs were established by the federal
MPO.
laws, Metropolitan Planning Organizations. Were established about 60 years ago by the Federal Transportation Act. And what they require is that every metropolitan area with greater than 50,000 people has a metropolitan planning organization. So what we do is all under federal regulations and federal law, but we program all the federal transportation money that comes to our region. And that adds up to several millions of dollars. And then we also do all the transportation planning. So we have a long-range plan for the region where we think, looking at all the data that we can get our hands on, what we think transportation should be like in the future of our community.
So it's planning for the future.
Planning for the future and programming funds. If a sponsor is awarded funding at our table by our members, 95% of the project is funded, by federal money and state funding.
Right.
Because but just people's fees just don't cover it. The $2 or whatever that, to get on the bus or the.
Correct. Correct. I mean, the CDTA bus fees barely really cover the CDTA's operations cost, no less funding for transportation projects. Most of the projects are long-range capital projects, so they take years, to design and to complete. And that's different. That's a different pot of money, but that's what the federal transportation bill is really for. It's for those long-range capital projects.
Are you worried with the Trump administration that some of this money might be drying up or increasing?
It's a good question. The new president has what he's called an infrastructure bill, and that infrastructure bill is meant to pay for all the problems that we have and all the different types of infrastructure, where we have this deteriorating older infrastructure that hasn't been renewed or replaced or reconstructed in years, and it's really just not up to speed. It's not in good condition.
So do you fear that this money that we're too reliant on federal funds, that if it dries up we'll be hurt more than what other states who don't rely on federal funds, would be hurt?
It's difficult because I think all the states rely on federal funding for transportation.
No, I don't mean zero. I just mean we're relying more on federal money than other states. And is that something that you fear, or are you optimistic that there will be more money coming in?
I think
is this an area where the Trump administration is looking to cut or expand?
The infrastructure proposal, and there hasn't been enough detail to analyze, unfortunately, but the infrastructure proposal talks mostly about tax credits to the private sector. And during the campaign, they talked about $167 billion worth of tax credits to the private sector. And somehow that funding equated to the $1 trillion figure that you hear all the time when it comes to the infrastructure plan. $1 trillion worth of investment, not actual tax credits. Our concern is that if you rely too much on tax credits, you're really not going to get the $1 trillion worth of infrastructure investment. It's just not going to happen. You need to add new money, and that's really what the history has shown. Private investors will invest in transportation if they can make money. So if they can charge tolls, or if their tax credits cover enough of the project, then they'll invest. But for the most part, large infrastructure projects need federal funding.
And what do you think of privatization of roads?
It's been tried in states like Illinois and Indiana and Virginia,
Yeah.
and most of the cases that I've read, it hasn't been very successful. That the private company eventually doesn't make the revenue that they planned, or they underestimated maintenance cost, and they just don't have the funding to run the road or to maintain the road properly. So, I think it's like all public infrastructure. It's very difficult to make money on it, and that's why you see your water systems, your sewer systems, and most of your roads are publicly owned.
And I wanted to just tell you this story that you'd appreciate when we talk about federal funding. I-88, when they first built that, before that existed, it was only Route 7.
Right.
So to get from Albany to Binghamton. So the Senate Majority Leader, Warren Anderson, was fed up with driving Route 7. So and Daniel Patrick Moynihan, our senior U.S. Senator, was in a very prominent, high-ranking position, and the two of them got together, Republican, Democrat, and they devised this road, this interstate road, which was paid 90% by the feds and 10% by the state. And Anderson said that he would get that 10% in the budget, and bonded, I guess it's bonded, and then Moynihan said that the way he would, in order for him to carry this bill, it would he lived in Pinder's Corners in Delaware County. And so when you see this road dipping down into Davenport Center, it's like 10 miles or 5 miles from Pinder's Corners. So that's why the road goes down to Davenport Center and then up to Oneonta, because his district office was in Oneonta. Yeah. So he had one exit to go from his house to his district office,
right.
And that's why the road dips down and then goes up and goes across to Binghamton at that point. But and it's named after Anderson, not Moynihan.
Right.
So you can imagine that was that's a funny story that I often like to tell, and how roads get built in this state.
Right. Well, sometimes politics does get involved in that, in making those decisions.
Yeah.
It's similar to the Tappan Zee Bridge location, and where that was located. I mean, originally, building a bridge in the widest section of the Hudson is not really the best idea. A wider, longer bridge is going to cost more. So you really don't look at the widest sections of the Hudson River. You look at, narrower sections. But Governor Dewey didn't want the Port Authority, right? The Port Authority involved in that construction, or those revenues from the tolls. So they built just beyond the Port Authority boundary.
Boundary, which is 25 miles.
25 miles, and just happens to be at the widest section of the Hudson River.
So they have it 25 miles and 8 inches or something.
Right,
it's like,
right.
So
So
we had
that-
the senator from Rockland County was on our show and explaining the
Yeah.
same story. Yeah. So that's why it's at the widest section.
Political decisions getting involved in public, decision making.
That's right.
It happens, Mark.
But
You were
these
there.
funny story. They're just, you just got to laugh at these stories. I mean, that it's beyond our control. It's above our pay grade. So, as they say.
Do you think the transportation is adequate in the capital district? I mean, you'd at least see more bus routes, or I don't know what. I mean, I usually go by car, to tell you the truth, so I'm not asking for myself. But
Right.
I'm just saying that some people find it a little. I mean, it's in New York City. You go down there, it's
Right.
it's
You
so
said you
good.
liked the number 18 going out to Del Mar.
I've gone on it a few times. I have.
We look at, in our long-range plan, we look at some of the trends, and some of the younger people, the millennials, the Generation Xers, I mean, they look at transportation a little bit differently than, some of us who are maybe more attached to the car. They like choices. They want transportation choices. They want to be able to get into an Uber vehicle one day, to ride a bus, to take a bicycle, to even take a light rail or something like that. But some of the younger people don't even own cars, don't even get their licenses. So for us in our long-range plan, we look at trying to provide more choices, in the capital region. Now, we may not be ready for light rail because we may not have the density for something like that, but bike share, car share, Uber, certainly more bike paths, sidewalks, so that people can walk and even commute to work on bikes. So providing those choices, I think, are where we kind of need improvement in the capital region. We have a great bus system. I think CDTA does a great job, and they're developing their BRT and things like that.
BRT.
BRT, Bus Rapid Transit, I'm
Thank you.
sorry.
That's okay.
And we have a very good highway system. We have a lot of interstates for a small region.
We've
We
been
have
overbuilt.
major interstates.
We're overbuilt.
in some regards.
And that's fine. I
Right.
don't mind that.
Right.
Coming from Brooklyn, I don't mind that because I don't want any more
Right.
traffic jams.
Right.
This is fine.
So where we could really improve is in the other areas, other modes of transportation.
But
beyond beyond the roads.
You mentioned that we don't have the density for rail. At some point, New York City didn't have the density for rail, and they still built the New York City subway system in 3 different tranches, I
Right.
guess. The independent, the IND line, the BMT, Brooklyn Manhattan Transit, and the IRT.
Right, the 3 companies.
Those are the 3.
Right.
So, I just think that we do need to have some rail system in here to connect us, because I would go, let's say, to Chatham a lot more for Chatham's a very artsy community, and they have a very nice theater there.
Right.
And it would bring, and they got their county fairs at Chatham, Columbia County Fair. I mean, between Hudson and Chatham and Catskill and Hunter-Tannersville for the tourism, Amsterdam, Albany, Troy, Schenectady, Clifton Park, Saratoga Springs, Glens Falls, Lake George for the tourism. I mean, you could really make this a happening place, and I see all these billions and billions of dollars going to New York City. And it pains me to see all that money going there and not up here, that no one is taking that vision and proposing a grand scheme of what we could look like. Just to dream, even.
Right,
okay?
right.
Just to say, I don't even see anything being put to paper or on computer. And it's so easy to do these days, of where you could run those lines. Because I would go to Schenectady more. I would go to, if I could just, go to a transportation hub and get on a rail and not worry about parking. But these are all walkable cities. Saratoga prides itself on being a walkable city.
Right.
And I think that's something that really could, if you build it, they will come. If they see that you have this infrastructure in place, then maybe not just companies, but housing would improve, and you'd have a much different society.
I would agree with you on a lot of what you just said. I mean, transit-oriented development is a term we use, TOD, to represent the development you see when you improve transit operations in different cities. And we've seen it in Boston and New York and all the places that have these choices and light rail and all that. You see development around those stations, where businesses want to be and services want to be provided, because all those people are going to those stations.
And
coming out, exactly. So absolutely, there is some development associated with that. You make a good point about a long-range vision. We don't get into that much detail in our long-range plan about light rail, because when we look at the numbers, it's difficult to justify at this point. It doesn't mean it's not not something that we should look at in the future. Maybe we should talk more about what our vision is about it.
But what I'm thinking is that even if you had this grand master plan, this vision, this dream that you could have, then you could find out, well, what do we need to do to make it viable? What needs to happen? Where is this falling short that makes it not attractive to build this?
Right.
And you don't have to build it all at once. You build it in stages.
Right.
No, you do it over a 50-year period, but you build it,
Right.
and people see, oh, here's a new track going in on this side or that side, and obviously Hunter-Tannersville, Lake George are summer stops. Let's say, you don't have those stops you have them at the end of the line, and you don't have to have it, a stop all year long. But
Right. It's difficult in the future of transportation is really kind of exciting at this point because of
Yeah.
all the new technological developments that are happening. You know, we've heard a lot lately about autonomous vehicles or
Right.
self-driving vehicles. For us as planners, we look at, well, how's that going to affect things like transit? You know, if we really do get to a point where all these vehicles are driving themselves, you know, do we still need transit, or how is it going to impact it? We're not sure yet. So I hear what you're saying, and I agree. I guess we're just kind of concerned about technology changing so quickly in transportation, like any other area, but changing so quickly that at some point you might not get the ridership on a light
But I'd
rail.
love to see a dream, you know, you
Yeah.
dreaming. I would love to see the CDTC dream a little.
Yeah.
And I just don't see it. And I was only at one of your meetings, but I still, over the years, just don't, you know. So I'm just here to give you a
No,
suggestion.
it's a valid
That's-
concern.
you know.
One of the things that we do when we develop our long-range plan or even update the plan is we go out to the public, and we're required by law, and we have no problem with public meetings and
No, I know that,
and you know, websites and surveys, and we do as much as we can. So I hear what you're saying, and I will definitely think about it.
Okay.
Our long-range plan is being updated in about 2 years.
Oh,
So maybe we
wonderful.
should think about that then.
Okay.
Make sure we do have a vision for it.
We can't have Mark
There
being
you
a
go.
subway driver
Yeah,
over here.
we'll have Mark write a draft, and we'll just put that draft right in our plan.
There you go. Well, he always has good ideas. I'll tell you, he's a big advocate for the Capital District. He wants to see it grow and prosper, and, you know, it's, well, what is the budget then? I mean, of all together, I mean, I guess you're not in charge of all the budgets, but look, again, I'm back to the money part of it.
Yep.
You know, that there is subsidies from the federal government.
Right.
Every transportation needs
Right.
something.
Are we basically CDTA in this region, or is there other transportation outlets that,
For transit,
well, I guess CDTA, I guess the port, the authority,
the Albany Port District Commission,
the port district, but then, and the airport.
the airport.
Yankee Trails is by themselves. It's
Yeah, they're
They're
private.
private
Private,
sector, so
yeah.
it's not eligible for public, you know, for public funding.
Right.
The budget that we have, it's actually unfortunately decreased a little bit, but we program about $60 million a year in our capital plan. And that's for all types of projects, for transit, interstates,
Wow.
bike path, bike trails, you name it, any
You're
any
in charge of the
transportation
bike-
mode.
You're in charge of the bike trails, because I know, like, I live in Delmar itself, and they're just so beautiful. They went from the Port of Albany, and they're going to end up in Voorheesville.
Correct.
But you're in charge of
Well, actually, it was interesting, because when I was Albany County Public Works, we had a lot of responsibility in developing the rail trail, the Albany County Rail Trail. And since I left, it's been completed, and it's a dramatic success. I mean, if you go down the rail trail now, you'll see hundreds of people anytime you're on the trail, you know, using it, walking, biking. We're doing a study right now to connect the bike trail to the Hudson Mohawk Trail in Albany. So the bike trail stops on South Pearl Street, you know, close to the Port of Albany.
Yeah.
And getting from there, from the end of the bike trail, the rail trail, to the Hudson Mohawk, which is over by Corning Preserve, is not that easy.
Right.
So we're almost done with this study. We have a final draft. We're going to be getting it out soon about our ideas on how we should do that.
All right.
So, yeah,
That's very
trails
interesting.
are pretty
And then
important.
that Corning Trail continues on?
The Corning Trail,
I never went up.
That goes all the way up.
you can go all the way to Buffalo. It's
Really?
not, it's not off-road all the way to Buffalo,
Right.
but there are many, every year, there's a bike ride that goes from Buffalo to Albany,
I think-
and hundreds of people
Didn't Pat
participate
Fahey-
in that
didn't
ride.
Pat Fahey do that ride?
I think she may have. I think she's a big bike
remember She
advocate.
was on the show.
Yeah.
She's-
Yep,
So
and
you
you
can
can also
really
go
go from-
north on the Champlain Trail,
Right.
which is off-road, on-road combination.
But you know what needs to be done, there's a group called the Albany Bicycle Coalition.
Mm-hmm, sure.
And
We
I-
know them well.
Just happened to go to one of their meetings. I don't know. I had some
Doing
free
everybody's
time.
meeting.
I don't know. And anyway, it just got interesting. But I said to them, what needs to be done is that, you know, you have an adopt a highway. You should adopt a bike path or something. I
Right.
mean, where you clean the schmutz off the road. I mean, it's a technical term, schmutz. But you know, even on Madison Avenue, you go to the street. You know, you ride your bicycle on the streets, and you're going over so much glass and rocks and pebbles and just all sorts of garbage. That's
Right.
you know, yeah, it's great to have the bike paths, and you have the bike lanes, but what good are they if they're all dirty? I mean, their suggestion to me was, well, you got to get tires with Kevlar in them.
Wow, that's
Kevlar-
expensive.
Well, they said it's about $30 a tire.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you gotta. They have
is it? I don't
Kevlar
know
so
what
that
you're
you don't.
talking about.
Kevlar is like is this rubber, high density rubber that's very compact, and it really is very resistant to puncture.
They use it in bulletproof vests.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
It's very resistant to, to puncture and forces and even bullets.
I think Batman has it in his.
And you might, but Kevlar, and Kevlar's not cheap either, but, wow.
So that was their solution. So that's how bad it is. And I would really recommend that, maybe you could look into this, and spiking is in your bailiwick. And, again, this is just not, I'm a bicyclist, but I find that I have to drive my bike, put the bike in the car and drive it to a trail.
Yeah.
We're in Brooklyn, you just go out to your garage and you're just bicycling, Here, you got to actually put the bike in the car. And then they had this thing, I said, you got the bike on the bike racks on the buses.
Bikes on buses.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you have that, which is good.
Right.
Yeah.
We, one of the programs we have for biking is Bike to Work Day and Bike to School Day.
Yeah.
And they're both this month, because this is biking month.
April.
May
Okay.
is biking month. And so the May 19th is Bike to Work Day.
Okay.
And some of us will bike to work. And I've done it a couple times, and couple years in a row now.
Good for you.
It's not easy, because there aren't a lot of separate trails, protected trails, dedicated trails for
Right.
bikes. But it gives you a real perspective of what it takes to ride a bicycle in our area. And
Yeah,
sometimes it's not easy.
Well, we do have a lot of hills, and we do have
Yeah.
some challenges in terms of that. And,
Yeah.
but
And some drivers are just not as considerate as they could be when you're driving in their lane.
well, they
But-
got more insurance than I do. Remember that from Fried Green Tomatoes?
Oh,
in the
geez.
movie?
Yes,
You have
Yeah.
more insurance than I do.
right. So we try to encourage bicycling too.
So what is your view of what we have here in the city, in this area here, in terms of being more multimodal? Do you think we're adequate?
No. Short answer, no. I mean, we talked a little bit about transit. I think transit does a very good job, and CDTA is doing a good job with their bus rapid transit lines. Some of the problem, here's the problem coming up now with the new administration looking actually to delete the Small Starts program. It's a federal transit agency program called Small Starts, and actually funds transit programs like BRTs and like light rail. Well, they're going to, if they do delete that program, then CDTA will not have the funding for things like bus rapid transit or any other improvement. So there's a challenge in there, but I think we could work on transit. We could certainly work on dedicated bike lanes. We don't have them. Madison Avenue Road Diet is really the first dedicated bike lane that we have in any city in this area.
I think now they're revamping the whole Delaware Avenue. I mean, in Bethlehem,
Right.
obviously Delaware Avenue goes into Albany also. But I think they're supposed to put in a bike lane also there.
We're paying for a study with the town of Bethlehem to look at Delaware Avenue, especially from Four Corners out to the city of Albany, and look if that road diet would work, if a road diet would work there. And if we do get a road diet to work, then you would have lanes, you would have room for dedicated bike lanes. So that's what Bethlehem is looking at. You're absolutely right. Looking at those opportunities to develop dedicated lanes, even dedicated transit lanes, the Washington Western BRT, Bus Rapid Transit, going from downtown Albany through SUNY campus, that section through Harriman and SUNY will have dedicated transit lanes. Those will be the first dedicated transit lanes, in our area. So I think that's where we could improve, is building these dedicated lanes so that transit can operate more efficiently and bicycles can operate more safely.
Now, it was brought up at that meeting that the bicycle lane around the Uptown SUNY campus ends at Collins Circle, just ends. And there was, you come down Washington Avenue and then it goes into the campus, and I mean, I don't know but did you ever hear a concern about that? Or?
No, we haven't. I mean, you can, there's a dedicated multi-use path that runs from their entrance up to Fuller Road.
Yeah,
That I
that's what
use.
they're-
So
yeah.
there is a connection to Fuller Road.
To Fuller Road,
Right.
right.
And then you have to get on highway at
Uh-huh.
Fuller Road. There is no multi-use path there.
Yeah, that's tough.
So you're in the travel lane, yes, it is.
Okay. Let's talk about you for a few minutes, because you have how old are you now?
I'm 61.
61, okay. And how much do you earn for your position? It's public record. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just-
it's about 120.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good for this area. But you had jobs, well, first of all, you're Harvard, and you had an MPA at Harvard,
Correct,
public
from the
administration.
Kennedy School of Government.
That's wonderful, but you got a Bachelor of Science, you have a history at the Coast Guard, and you have a degree in oceanography, chemical, and physical something, or physical science?
Yes.
Okay.
Be sure that the roads don't go into the ocean.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a connection, yeah, maybe.
In high school, I had an interest in marine science and oceanography, and I found that program at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. I was fortunate enough to be accepted. They're very competitive. It's not by political appointment.
Mm-hmm.
You actually look at your records in high school to make the selections at the Coast Guard Academy. 4 years at the Academy, and then I did 12 years active duty in the Coast Guard before coming back to Albany.
Which high school did you go to?
I went to the old Vincentian Institute
Oh, okay.
in Albany, Midtown Albany there.
No, that's now the PAL headquarters or something.
It's PAL, it's a
Right.
seniors housing building.
Well,
It's
that's
not a high school anymore.
Madison and Quail, right?
Madison and Quail. That's where I grew up, in that area.
In that area.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're a local boy. I
Born
guess.
and raised,
Okay.
and I still live in the city.
So then you became the commissioner of water and water commissioner for the city.
Yeah, my wife and I had traveled a lot in the Coast Guard, and we'd started having, children. It was a little hard on children and families to move around a lot. So got out of the Coast Guard, came back to the Albany area, because my wife and I are both from Albany. And I was fortunate enough to to earn, or what do you want to call it, be appointed Commissioner of Water by Mayor Whalen. And that was a great job.
And then what, Bob Cross was after you?
I worked for 2 years under Mayor Jennings, and Bob Cross was after me.
Okay. So let me ask you, why are the water rates and the sewer rates the same in the city of Albany? I never got an answer to this.
The sewer rates are really estimated, and they're
Yes.
basically estimated on the amount of water that you use.
Why?
The assumption is that, well, because sewer is not metered like water. So what goes into the sewer line, no one really knows the exact amount. So you assume that all the water you take in has to go out, in the sewer system. So theoretically, it's the equal amount of water coming in equals the amount of going out. So it's always the same. And it's commonly done that throughout the country.
Throughout the country?
Yeah,
it's
you
done
don't
that way?
normally meter sewers.
Right, no.
You just meter the water coming in and assume that's got to leave some way.
Okay, well, that's a good explanation,
Through the
thank
system.
you. And then you became the Commissioner of Public Works in Albany County.
Albany County Public Works. The county has 300 miles of road system in Albany County, and it's a pretty significant amount of miles, 300 miles. A lot of those roads are in the rural sections, so maintaining those roads, snow and ice operations on those roads, very challenging job, interesting job. Really
Interesting,
enjoyed
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, really enjoyed it.
So, because the hill towns get different weather than what the lowlands get.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Being born and raised in Albany, I never realized the elevation difference in the hill towns and the climate difference in the hill towns. Oftentimes, we'd see rain down here, and we'd go up on the hill, and we'd
6
see
inches
inches of snow. And it's just amazing, the difference. You wouldn't realize it unless you went up there and saw it for yourself. You wouldn't believe it. It's pretty different, very different.
And then somehow they liked your work so much at Public Works, they made you Director of Operations for the entire county.
I had a very good boss at Albany County. County Exec Mike Breslin was great to work for. And after all the experience as a department head, he brought me up to operations. And basic operations worked with all the department heads in the county. So I had a lot of experience, in that job, and he brought me up to.
Well, I think it's a temperament issue. You have the right temperament. That I think that's what. I mean, you may have ulcers, but you don't express your I mean,
You have to be able to work with everybody.
Right,
You have to be able to work
Find
with everybody and
solutions.
everything.
And find solutions to problems,
Absolutely, you
yeah.
have to be positive, and you have to, try to get the job done, and not look at the problems, but look at the solutions to those
That's right,
problems.
yeah.
That's the key.
But that was something that you were there maybe less than 2 years. I
Yeah,
guess that
about 2
was-
years, before Michael decided to retire.
Oh,
which-
and then the next executive didn't.
Right, yeah, we served at the pleasure of the
Yeah.
county executive, so when that changed, we changed.
Right, so you left, and were you unemployed for any amount of time? Oh,
A
yeah,
few
you were
months.
about 6 months.
Yeah,
huh?
a few
Okay.
months, yeah.
And then this opened up, this job, or?
The executive director of Capital District Transportation Committee retired, and it was just very good timing, because I had represented Albany County on the committee for 17 years. So I knew all the programs, I knew the staff, so it was great timing. I applied for the job, was interviewed several times. It was a national search, and I was selected for executive director.
I love these national searches that find someone in the
Locally.
backyard. Yeah.
Right.
Like this Albany School District's going through now with the superintendent, you know.
It was a good selection process, I thought, but that was just,
Of course, you were
I'm
chosen.
biased, I'm
That's
biased,
right.
right, I'm biased, so. I
So
thought-
you mentioned you knew the staff. You have 13 staff people, including yourself?
Correct.
Including yourself.
Right.
What's the budget?
We're a mid-size, so our budget's about $2 million for staff,
No, overall budget for the entire operation of CDTC.
about $2
$2
million.
million, okay,
Yeah,
'cause it's all
not a
staff?
lot. It's mostly staff, most
Oh.
of our cost is our staff. That doesn't, well, I shouldn't, 2 million, a little, maybe 2.5 when you look at all the studies we do too,
Yeah.
because we get planning funds, we also use that for studies.
Okay.
So about 2.5.
Well, keep up the good work, because I think I was very impressed when I came to the meeting, and, and Kathy Sheehan, the mayor of Albany, is the chair.
He's
of
our
the-
chair of our committee, yes.
Yeah, so,
Yep.
okay, well,
All right, keep everybody moving. I always say keep moving to a person, but you have to keep the whole
Keep the
capital
whole-
district moving.
Exactly.
All right,
You-
keep it doing good work. Keep it up and success with good health.
All right, thank you very much.
continued success.